I'm the only one worthy of leading the god hunters." His words rang so true that it sounded like a universal truth. It was as if he had been a hegemon all along. "Blasphemy, Lord Dagmar! Lord Dagmar definitely won't let you off," he roared. "Dagmar is dead and I have killed him. You should leave. I won't kill you. Once all the hegemons are dead, you'll naturally come to serve me." When he finished, the white bone throne appeared behind Han Hao. He took a seat into the throne and looked at the god hunter like an emperor would his subject. He gave off a domineering sensation that shook them to the depths of their souls. The god hunter immediately knew that he wasn't lying when he saw Dagmar's signature throne. He must have been dead for the throne to be in Han Hao's possession. If Dagmar was powerful enough to make him give up his will to fight, Han Hao was even more terrifying. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, but Han Hao didn't say too much to him. Instead, he willed the bone flower to wrap around the god hunter and fling him aside. "Buzz of," he warned once more. This time around, nobody stayed behind. They all ran without turning back. Only Han Hao's acquaintance shot him an odd glance before he nodded unwillingly. "If you can really take over the whole God Hunter alliance, I will be at your beck and call." Han Hao nodded. "You should leave. Stay as far away from Omphalos as you can." The man didn't say much before he left. "Lord, we should leave too. It'll get much harder to when the hegemons come later," Polo advised respectfully. "Just look after the toxin brewers. I'll stay here a bit longer," he answered without turning back. He could feel that Han Shuo was coming their way and would reach Omphalos before long. Thanks to the quintessence, his connection with Han Shuo was better than ever. The two of them could communicate from anywhere within the fringe directly without relying on a magic mirror. "All right. Be careful, my lord," Polo said before he bowed and left. Right then, loud cheers erupted from various corners of Omphalos. They sounded like god hunters. Feeling that something was off, Han Hao used his demon generals that his bone spear unleashed and found that the god hunters did end up finding large stashes of black crystal coins in certain sovereign shops, which explained their cheers. Outside Omphalos, the hesitant hegemons that stayed outside seemed just as elated. They exchanged glances of greed before they decided that Dagmar's words could be trusted and charged in with their subordinates. By now, Han Shuo, Han Jin, and Andrina were close to Omphalos, but before they arrived, Han Jin's expression shifted. "Oh no." Chapter 985 Condition GDK 985. Condition Translator, Ryagawa TLC, Hedonist, what's going on? Han Shuo asked when Han Jin startled him. Han Jin nervously said, "There's a lot of energy crystals hidden beneath Omphalos. I didn't notice it the last time I was here. They are used for energy cannons and are highly explosive. What does this mean?" Han Shu began to ponder the gravity of the situation. If they explode, the whole of Omphalos will be vaporized instantly. Oh heavens! If all those energy crystals go off, there's no saying whether we'd escape alive or not. Big Brother is still inside. I fear he'll be in danger if he stays. Can that kind of explosion threaten an overgod? Han Shu immediately wondered if this could be someone's plot against the hegemons. "I think even overgods will die from the explosion," Han Jin exclaimed. Han Shu's expression immediately changed. He informed Han Hao about it telepathically and asked him to leave through the underground path immediately. "Han Jin, is there a way to stop the explosion?" Han Shu asked anxiously. Omphalos wasn't like Pandemonium. It was the hub of the fringe with all sorts of shops and many gods still there. It was important that it survived. He didn't want it to be reduced to rubble. Not only are there energy crystals underground, there are also stashes of black crystal coins all around Omphalos. Those crystals, given their high purity and energy density, will only exacerbate the explosion. All life in Omphalos will be wiped out instantly. Andrina added after some thought, but the next moment, something flashed across her eyes as she smiled. "Brian, don't you think we should just let the god hunters be vaporized in an instant? How wonderful it is for all of them to be killed right here and now." She hated the god hunters with a passion thanks to her grudge. Not to mention, she couldn't really care less about whether Omphalos survived. It was but a small price to pay for the deaths of all the god hunters. Naturally, Han Shu wouldn't opt for that. Not only would the Omphalos serve an important function in his future plan for the fringe, he also wanted to go after the water, fire, and life hegemons for Han Shui, Han Huo, and Han Mu. He wouldn't let their precious souls be obliterated. Not to mention, a sizable number of the God Hunters might end up serving Han Hao in the future. Killing them all would be the same as handicapping Han Hao after his eventual takeover of the God Hunter Alliance. There are methods, Han Jin said, eyeing Andrina. We can stop it if she agrees to help us. Andrina was a unique life form with a special ability to control energy crystals. She could definitely work something out, especially while working in tandem with Han Jin. Jin, why are you not on my side? She snapped. Han Jin laughed nervously and rubbed his hands in fear. After some hesitation, his eyes brightened. It is a massive lot of energy crystals down there, you know. It is more than enough to raise your power to the next realm. Andrina seemed charmed by the idea and giggled. Hee, Brian, if you agree to let me have all of the energy crystals, I'll agree to help. Deal, take it all. He couldn't afford to hesitate now. Han Shu's priorities were elsewhere. While it didn't sit too well to give her all those crystals as snacks, he didn't have much of a choice, especially when the crystals were good as gone if they were detonated. All right, Jin, let's isolate all the external energy waves, she said as she pulled Han Jin towards Omphalos with glee. Outside of Omphalos, Tyre and Log watched the whole thing sinisterly. Their preparations were complete. Log, let us move closer. Ha, don't worry. All it takes is for a pulse of my soul to flatten the whole of Omphalos. This place is still a little far from Omphalos, so we should get moving for the best results, Tyre said. He couldn't stop himself from laughing with excitement at the thought of seeing the ruins of Omphalos. No matter how powerful he was, that didn't stop him from letting his imminent success get to his head. Log seemed even more excited than Tyre. It's ready, right? Let's go, Omphalos will be ours. They left the barrier they were hiding in with their subordinates for Omphalos. Currently, chaos was breaking out in Omphalos. Apart from Daka, who came in earlier, the other hegemons also charged inside and killed anyone they saw as they spread out. The shops of the sovereigns became their main targets. Each one of them went looking for their own shops to ransack. Most of the gods within had fallen to the cruel god hunters without being able to resist one bit. Most of them were killed in their shops or hidden rooms they took refuge in. Seeing that all the hegemons had fallen for it, Daka waited in anticipation. Nobody paid attention to what he was doing now. All of you, spread out and leave Omphalos from different entrances. Make sure to hurry up, he said sternly. Why, sir, we should be plundering as much as we can like the rest. If we're slow, they'll take it all. One of his men questioned. Daka snapped coldly. It's pointless if you're dead. He swept his gaze across the rest and said, order your men to leave Omphalos right away, no questions asked. After seeing him snap with anger, they didn't dare say any more and hurriedly left according to his instructions. Even then, they didn't alert the rest around them who were too busy looting. They no longer cared about what was happening around them. Back at Celestial Pearl Pharmacy, Han Hao immediately went underground after receiving Han Shu's message. He didn't doubt the possibility of the explosion at all and left as quickly as he could. He soon caught up to Polo and the rest. Seeing how relaxed they were, he chided, hurry up. As fast as you can. The rest immediately knew something was up and dragged the toxin brewers along as quickly as they could without asking questions. All of a sudden, something occurred to Han Hao. He quickly contacted Han Shu. It must be Tyre and Log's doing. Nobody other than sovereigns are able to sneak that amount of energy crystals discreetly underground. Father, I've detected where they are. I know where they are. He interrupted as his senses detected a group of incoming people. His broadened senses allowed him to recognize Log and Tyre's aura from afar. By now, Han Jin and Andrina were heading towards Omphalos. Being unique life forms, they should be fine even if the explosion occurred, especially considering that they were formed from crystalline structures like the energy crystals. In fact, they might benefit from the explosion of energy if anything, so Han Shu wasn't too worried. He charged towards the two approaching sovereigns as he continued to converse with Han Hao. Jin and Andrina are approaching Omphalos to stop the explosion, but you still have to leave immediately. Go as far as you can. I don't know when they'll trigger the explosion. Father, those two are trying to take the hegemons out. Once Andrina and Jin take care of the situation, send me a notice. I will take my men to block off the exits and make them pay for destroying Pandemonium. All right. I'm heading to deal with Log and Tyre. In the next instant, he reached where they were, but he didn't show himself. He was worried his presence would cause them to detonate the crystals in a panic. After he sensed that Han Hao and the rest had left, and Han Jin and Andrina reached the depths of Omphalos, he appeared before Log, Tyre, and their men. Chapter 986, Only One Sovereign GDK 986. Only One Sovereign Translator. Ryagawa TLC. Hedonist Han Shu had appeared so abruptly in the midst of Log and Tyre's men that he shocked all of them. The slaughter was still happening in Omphalos, even though the sun was already beginning to set. The men, who discovered someone had popped up among them, cried in surprise, Who are you?" Not all of those men knew Han Shu. These so-called elites had been left by their leaders at the Shrine of Destruction and Audiobook. All they did was cultivate and protect those two places without taking a step outside. "Tyre, Log, come meet me," Han Shu said with a hearty laugh from up high. The two of them, who were at both ends of the group, immediately paled when they heard his explosive voice. They had no idea whatsoever why he would be here of all places, right when they were about to execute their plan too. Tyre especially had a bad feeling about the whole thing. After reflecting on their previous actions and ensuring that he hadn't made any mistakes, he exhaled heavily and smiled before he went over. As he headed there, his mind raced to find a way to wipe Han Shu out. By the time Tyre saw Han Shu, he noticed that Log had arrived earlier than he did from behind the group. He seemed to be laughing and chatting with Han Shu, much to Tyre's relief. Han Shu probably didn't know what was up yet. "Brian, I heard you suffered a huge loss at Pandemonium. The two of us can't even protect ourselves well, so we apologize for not being able to come to your aid." "We're truly sorry," Tyre said with a hint of grief. "We underestimated the power of the God Hunter Alliance. We didn't think that they'd overwhelm the whole of the Fringe so quickly. So far, we haven't received one bit of good news. I think we'll be hard-pressed to defend the Fringe, Brian." Han Shu found it rather weird that Tyre wouldn't be aware of their victory over the God Hunter Alliance, even though he shared the secret of the energy crystals with Daka. There was no way he wouldn't know, because the two brothers had their own means of communication. After a pause, Han Shu's lips curved into a sly smile. It was now plain that Daka was hiding the truth from him in order to get him to eliminate the hegemons. Han Shu wasn't in a rush to take any action yet, so he could buy more time for Han Jin and Andrina. Instead, he faked a deep sigh and said, "Pandemonium's now completely ruined. The 1,000 soldiers I had there were all killed. Faced with the God Hunter Alliance's sheer might, there was nothing we could do but watch as our own comrades were killed. All I could do was protect myself." His anger seemed to intensify at that point. He glared at Tyre and continued, "Why did Balinton and Kaz come to Pandemonium? Why didn't you two stop Judas and Tuckamore? Tyre, you didn't lose any men at all, while Bolton and Kaz brought plenty of them. It didn't seem you bothered to fight them at all. Why did you not come to save us even though you had so many troops at your disposal? You said you would help us before the battle began, but what did you do instead?" Han Shu got more and more agitated as he doubled down on the accusations, putting up a rather convincing act of being pushed to the edge. Among Tyre and Log's troops weren't just their direct subordinates. There were many other smaller factions that had temporarily submitted to their leadership, but they were far from loyal, and Han Shu's words were directed at precisely these people. As expected, some of the men cast doubtful glances at the two of them. "We did in fact not engage Bolton and Kaz in battle," said the leader of a relatively large faction, Karp. "Not to mention, most of those who perished in the battle at Osteoburg were one of ours, not those two's," said Slank, another leader. He took the chance to say what he really meant now that Han Shu was openly chiding them. "Sir Log, you've used our men as cannon fodder the whole time. Of all 193 brothers of mine, only 75 remain. Nearly 2/3 of them perished. Auntie and Krull lost all their men too. What about you? Your loyal followers are mostly unharmed. You took advantage of us and sacrificed us. Log, do you remember what you said when you tried to recruit us? You said you'd treat us the same as the rest and protect us the best you could, yet what did you do?" Slank's words cut much deeper than Han Shu's and sounded even more justified. Han Shu was just faking his anger, after all, while Slank truly had a bone to pick with them. He was filled with resentment for his comrades' deaths. "Slank, The reason your men suffered heavy losses was due to their own incompetence, Log said coldly, still smiling. Each one of my men is an elite and are far more powerful than you all, so it's no surprise they die less often. Are you planning to turn against us now because of this? He shot Tyre a hidden glance, hinting that they should deal with Han Shu right now. At the very least, they had to chase him away so he didn't continue to ruin their plans. Before Han Shu came, these two dissatisfied leaders didn't really dare to make their misgivings heard, for no overgod was going to stand up for them. They didn't even dare to resist. But now, they were all too happy to take this opportunity Han Shu provided them to vent their complaints. Tyre also started to grow anxious. He secretly signaled Dhaka and learned that their group was about to leave Omphalos soon, while the other hegemons had all gone in. Yet now, he had to make sure the various faction leaders listened to him and calm the situation down. While most of the hegemons were within, they left quite a number of subordinates outside, enough in number to match up with his and Log's men. He couldn't afford to have his own troops fracture now. While it was fine back then, Han Shu's arrival was a catalyst to his troops' destabilization. After hesitating for a bit, Tyre suddenly said, "Why are you trying to sow division at this juncture? The survival of Omphalos is at stake. What in the world are you planning?" Han Shu laughed loudly with a hint of anger before he pointed at Tyre. "Oh, Tyre, if you can't own up to your own deeds, you can never be the ruler of the fringe. You simply see those who joined you as cannon fodder and keep using them as your shields in battle. You can even sacrifice your friends for your own sake. Even though you knew Pandemonium was in danger, you just sat there and watched. With you in charge, the fringe is sure to be doomed." The other leaders were filled with even more worry and began hesitating. It seemed that they no longer intended to fight with Log and Tyre. Han Shuo's words simply described the two of them far too well. They were leaders that didn't care for their livelihoods at all and would be happy to dump them into the abyss. "Brian, I know you're grieving because of Pandemonium's destruction, but if you continue to spout those baseless words to incite us, don't blame me for not taking our previous friendship into account." Tyre took a deep breath and calmed his tone of voice, but it was plain to see that this was his final warning. "Friendship, ha, since when did you care about that? I lost nearly 1,000 comrades, and it's all your fault. If Bolton, Cause, Tuckamore, and Judas hadn't been there, we would have been able to hold on. It's all because of your incompetence that my comrades are dead. You've gone mad." Tyre no longer hesitated and formed a long spear with destruction energy as he charged towards Han Shu. When he struck, a tense atmosphere filled the air. The spear pierced through everything with such destructive power that it was as if it had pierced space itself, revealing the odd, colorful fabric within. The moment he struck, Log also acted, but his approach was different. He concentrated death energy into a giant cobra that opened its mouth wide in an attempt to swallow Han Shu up. The rest just watched as the three fought, thinking that there was no way Han Shu would stand a chance with two sovereigns attacking him. They then turned their attention to Slank and Carp. These two would suffer the same fate. Slank, Carp, as well as a few other faction leaders, could feel the malice coming from the two sovereign subordinates, and knew that they wouldn't be spared if Han Shu fell. Now, they hoped that Han Shu could hold back against those two long enough despite having nothing to do with him beforehand, all in the hopes that he could buy them time to escape. The moment they saw an opportunity to leave, they wouldn't hesitate. There would be no more serving as the shields for Tyre and Log. With that in mind, they hoped that this new and upcoming ace in the fringe would be able to hold on. If he could help them escape, they would even serve under him, the man who dared to go against two powerful sovereigns. At least, it would be much better than serving those sovereigns that didn't care for their lives at all. "Ha, so you got mad when I pointed out your mistakes." Han Shu laughed as if he wasn't facing off against two powerful sovereigns. His laughter reverberated all the way to Omphalos. Right after, he suddenly struck. 13 avatars appeared in midair, 6 of which with the energies of death, destruction, darkness, water, lightning, and wind fused together. The new domain of divinity spread out and enveloped the space around them. Suddenly, Log and Tyre's attacks were neutered. Both the spear and cobra shattered in an instant. The overlapping 6 avatars looked down on them like a god would mere mortals. His cold eyes were cruel and merciless. With a single push of the hand, insurmountable pressure came down against Log and Tyre, pressing them almost instantly into the ground and half burying them in the process. Everyone was shocked silent. Tyre and Log's men, as well as the other faction leaders, were flabbergasted. They looked at the godly avatar floating in the sky in utter shock. Log and Tyre were still partly buried in the ground, looking completely distraught and confused. It was as if they were laughing one moment and crying another as their mental faculties broke down. "What 5 sovereigns? There is only one sovereign in the fringe," Slank muttered when he snapped out of it. Though it wasn't loud, the words rang clearly in everyone's ears. Indeed, there was only one sovereign. Those words seemed to echo nonstop as everyone there snapped out of their stupor and looked up at Han Shu like he was the one fit to rule the fringe. The others like Tyre, Log, Wasir, and Asura were mere side characters compared to him. Impossible. How can this be? Tyre, who used to be recognized as the #1 sovereign, seemed completely out of it. It was as if all his motivation and fighting spirit had been smothered at the sight of the gigantic avatar. "Tyre, we still have one move. Use it!" Log cried when he saw Tyre's confusion. Tyre snapped out of it and laughed like a maniac. "Yes, indeed, I do have one final resort. The situation is still salvageable." By now, he no longer cared whether Daka and the rest managed to escape and telepathically triggered the detonation mechanism he planted underneath Omphalos. However, Han Shuo merely watched his panicked attempt at a comeback as if everything was still under control. As expected, Tyre's expression immediately changed when he realized there was no response after his detonation signal. It was impossible. He jumped out of the hole and turned towards Omphalos. "Why? Why?" Log also grimaced at seeing Tyre's reaction and snapped his head to Han Shuo, who was smiling mockingly at them. He immediately figured that Han Shuo had done something to thwart their plans. "Tyre, I think it's Brian's doing. The explosion is no longer possible," he said with a pained look. "No, it can't be," Tyre cried. His madness seemed to trigger something as a loud boom came from Omphalos. That instant, the whole ground shook as the sound rang so loud it felt like the world was collapsing. Even though it was quite far away, everyone could feel the horrifying effects. Han Shu's smile immediately vanished when his eyes widened in stupor. He saw thick smoke coming from the area ahead, unaware of what was going on. In a panic, he tried to sense Han Jin, Andrina, and Han Hao, the 3 of whom he cared the most about. Immediately, he relaxed when he found that they were fine. He then sensed that the explosion had only ruined 1/5 of the Omphalos, the region ruled by Tyre. It seemed that Han Jin and Andrina's plan had worked, but Tyre still had one last trick up his sleeve to make it explode in some capacity. Chapter 987, Deep Camaraderie, GDK 987. Deep Camaraderie Translator, Ryagawa TLC, Hedonist the ashen-faced Tyre and Log beamed with excitement once more. Log said, "We wiped out the hegemons inside Omphalos all at once. Slank Carp, the situation in the fringe has now changed. We suffered huge losses so that we can get all the hegemons in one place to wipe them out. Do you know why I did what I did now? I lost 2/3 of my men, and this isn't going to bring them back," Slank said, after recovering from the shock. He no longer trusted Log about anything, especially after he admitted to using them as cannon fodder. "Brian, the hegemons are done for, and you have been avenged. We should no longer be fighting with each other. The situation now is urgent, and we should deal with the remnant god hunters first. What do you say?" Tyre asked, finally calming himself down and spinning the situation around. As expected of a powerful overgod, his attitude immediately shifted the moment he saw that Han Shu was far more powerful than them. Han Shu didn't care about what Tyre's intentions were and looked towards Omphalos coldly. "My celestial pearl pharmacy was still operating there, with many of my subordinates among the staff. You blew up the whole place without giving me any previous notice to get my men out of there, and now they have perished in the explosion. Do you think I'll still be on your side after you just killed so many of mine? Sacrifices are essential for the Fringe's victory. Brian, you should be more open-minded about this. Why do you never have to sacrifice anything? Why are we the only ones sacrificed?" The other faction leaders complained without restraint, one louder than the other. They had suppressed these dissenting thoughts for quite some time, and they came pouring out towards Log and Tyre in one go after Han Shu triggered it. "That's right. Why did you sacrifice our men but never your own?" Tyre, you've never cared about our well-being, Carp snapped. Ha ha ha, Sir Log is even better. He can sacrifice his loyal subordinates with no problem. Remember how he unhesitantly grabbed one of his men, who had served him for many hundred of years, to block a blow from Cause before sneaking away. If he doesn't care about his own men's lives, why would he care about ours? Slank said mockingly, having personally witnessed this at Audiobook. After witnessing Han Shu's power, Carp and Slank's courage was inflated. They believed that before his impressive strength, Tyre and Log wouldn't dare to harm them. However, it wasn't just the two of them. Many more started to criticize Log and Tyre for their sneaky actions, including even some of their own subordinates who were convinced. After years of working for them, they had come to notice such tendencies as well, especially after the rest highlighted it for them. Back then, there were no sovereigns who could avenge their subordinates like Han Shu, so people didn't really think too much about it. But now, they couldn't help comparing their masters to Han Shu. What are you guys saying? Do you want to mutiny? Log said, after noticing that even his loyal followers seemed to be going against them. The moment he snapped, the others lowered their heads. However, Slank and Carp weren't his subordinates, and they chewed him out even more with Han Shuo backing them. You have a death wish. Log suddenly lashed out at Slank as his venomous death energy gathered in the surroundings before a bone cage locked Slank up. Han Shuo knew that Log would act. Watching from above, he unleashed the combined 6 energies towards them. All of a sudden, the bone cage shattered apart. A great force pressed down on Log, pinning him down so fast that he wasn't able to evade it. The force from the push caused him to spit out blood. With but a thought, the new domain sent down an odd power that seemed to entrap Log like a net. Han Shuo also noticed that Tyre was about to sneak away and laughed. Tyre, I won't deal with you now. I would like to see what kind of chaos you can cause with Daka and his men. When he said that, Tyre's jaw dropped. What? What did you say? Isn't Daka your elder brother? I bet you have already conspired with him to wipe out everyone else that survived the explosion, right? 2 destruction overgods working together is sure to be terrifying. You're trying to count on that to turn everything around, right? Han Shuo looked at Tyre with a mocking smile. What? Tyre's actually conspiring with Daka? Carp looked at the exposed Tyre with disbelief. It's no wonder. Tyre was among those who sold the fringe out. This time around, everyone, not just Slank and Carp, were fueled with rage. The fact that Tyre was Daka's blood brother was something they couldn't even have fathomed. That meant that Tyre had been a traitor the whole time and was at least at half at fault for how badly the fringe was faring against the God Hunters. Even Log, trapped and as injured as he was, wore a face of disbelief. With a resigned laughter, he said, I see. Tyre, oh Tyre, you were planning to wipe me out with your brother Daka, huh? Ha ha ha. That way, you'd stand at the top of the fringe with nobody being able to threaten your position. Tyre's expression was grimmer than it could ever be. He didn't utter a single word. Don't bother to argue your way out of this. Daka will be here in a moment. The truth will come to light then. I'd like to see if you'll be able to defeat me by working with Daka, Han Shu said with a smirk as he turned to look in the distance. Someone was coming, and it couldn't be anyone but Daka. What's with that, Tyre? Why did you only destroy a 5th of Omphalos, your 5th of the place too? Daka roared before he even arrived. The hegemons in Omphalos hadn't all died from the explosion. Daka was faring really hard trying to regain control of the situation. His anger was hardly surprising, given how all his efforts over the years had been ruined. That was all the proof they needed to show that he and Tyre were in fact brothers. What? Daka suddenly stopped. Brian, why are you here? He immediately recoiled at the thought of how powerful he was, still traumatized by the whole incident back at Pandemonium. Daka, I gave you a chance, but it seems that you don't appreciate it. Since you still haven't left the fringe, you will never be able to. Han Shu turned to Tyre and said, Do you have anything else to say at this point? Brothers, we just have to wipe Brian out and the fringe will be ours. Tyre suddenly said as he laughed out of a sudden. Seeing that there were still some people who doubted him, he continued, That's right, Daka and I are indeed brothers. I have also made use of others. But aren't you all fine? I did this all for myself. In the future, you'll see that the God Hunter Alliance will not be a threat to us with me in charge. Isn't that what we have all been working towards? He was still trying to salvage any loyalty he had left. The subordinates who had followed him over the years seemed conflicted, but not one of them promised that they would fight by his side immediately. They didn't seem to be refusing either, choosing instead to remain silent. Han Shu immediately knew the reason they were hesitating. Who rules and who falls will be decided by this fight. Ha, Daka, Tyre, all you need to do is defeat me. Your men will still remain yours at the end. Tyre gave it some thought and immediately knew what his men were thinking. If he and Daka were killed in the following battle, there was no assurance for the other's safety. Brother, let us kill Brian. There is no overgod that can match up against us, Tyre proudly proclaimed. Daka's courage seemed to be stoked by his words. Ha, not bad. No overgod without a quintessence can fight us two brothers. The two of them turned to Han Shu all of a sudden. They were both destruction overgods of the same blood, which would allow them to synchronize much better with each other. They could also combine their domains, like what Han Shu was doing. After they did so, their powers of destruction shot through the roof. Now, perhaps no overgod without quintessence would be able to resist them. However, combining domains using 6 different energies was 100 times harder than what Daka and Tyre were doing, and consequently, 100 times more powerful. They were still far from his match. Even after sensing their power rise, Han Shu still remained smiling. He waited for their power to reach their peak and said, Daka, Tyre, how dare the likes of you claim to be unmatched by all overgods? Destruction energy exploded from Han Shu and spread outwards like a huge wave. The power was so terrifying that it squeezed Daka and Tyre's combined domain out and crushed it. I don't even fear the gods of death and light, so why would I fear small fry like you? He laughed so loud that he shook the skies as even more power came surging from the void towards the two of them. Nothing but their pained cries could be heard. Tyre was surrounded by a powerful light and transported to the odd space where Log was kept captive. When Daka heard that, he immediately tried to escape, only to be struck by the wave of light, ending up bloodied all over. He didn't dare to turn back to so much as glance at Han Shu, nor care about his younger brother's survival. The pain he felt caused him to flee in desperation. The thought of Han Shu's claim about not fearing the gods of death and light made him aware of something. When he was leaving Pandemonium, he knew that Nestor was on the way there. He thought that Han Shu and Han Hao would undoubtedly be killed by him, yet he was still alive and said something like that. The implications of that were so frightening that Daka fled without taking Han Shu's attack like Tyre did. Brother, Tyre cried in the prison beside Log. He couldn't escape nor fight, but his vision and hearing were unimpeded. He yelled desperately as he watched Daka flee without caring about anything else. Daka had obviously heard him, but he didn't stop at all. Han Shu smiled and said, Now that's smart of you, but do you really think you can escape? The reason Han Shu didn't make a move was that he could feel Han Hao nearby. Daka suddenly noticed someone ahead of him. Soon, it was apparent that it was Han Hao. You want to try to stop me too? Since your father hurt me, I'll pay him back by getting back at you. He unleashed a gigantic orb of destruction, using all the destruction energy gathered in his body before slinging the gray sun towards Han Hao. Discontent seemed to flash across Han Hao's eyes as he stood proudly, wielding his bone spear. You really deserve death. He raised the spear and shot a beam out from its tip. It contained all sorts of negative energies like death, despair, and cruelty. The gray sun of destruction, Daka's all-out attack, seemed so insignificant compared to the beam. Then, a loud explosion could be heard. Daka's charge suddenly stopped, and before he could react, he could already see the bone spear before him. In the next instant, it pierced between his eyes, nailing him in mid-air, before his flesh and soul were all absorbed by the spear. The despair he felt before his death was converted into a mist that Han Hao swallowed. His eyes glowed brighter as if he had just been nourished by it. Daka had just died like that. How did the father and son get so powerful in a matter of days? You dare attack my family? You deserve to die, Han Hao said as he pulled the spear out of Daka's divine body before it crumbled into nothingness. Daka had died after everything sucked out of him. After killing Daka, Han Hao didn't come over. Instead, he sent a telepathic message, Father, I already killed Daka. There are still a few hegemons at Omphalos. I'll make sure they won't leave the fringe alive. Go ahead, I'll be there shortly. Han Shu then turned to his prisoners. Tyre, your brother left first and died first. You should know that he's gone if you can communicate with his soul. Tyre, who was still mired in hate for his heartless brother, now seemed flabbergasted. He tried to reach out with the magic mirror before laughing. Ha ha, ha ha ha. He deserved to die. Let's die together. All of a sudden, a great destructive force came from his body and shook the cage before enveloping it in light. Even Log wasn't able to escape as Tyre detonated his divine body. Seeing Tyre committing suicide, Han Shuo hurriedly sapped their powers away and threw the cauldron of myriad demons towards the cage. Even if he couldn't collect their divine bodies or divine energies, he would be able to get their purified divine souls. The divine soul of an overgod was far too precious. With Tyre and Logs, one could advance further in death and destruction energy. Once someone from the House of Han understood the intricacies of the power, they might become powerful overgods themselves one day. Thankfully, Han Shuo made it in time. The cauldron managed to suck the two's souls up before they were eradicated by the light. Though Tyre had said Daka deserved to die, he proceeded to commit suicide. Han Shuo found it rather weird. He wasn't sure if he chose to kill himself because of his close ties with Daka, or whether he did so because he knew there was no hope of escaping Han Shuo's wrath. Chapter 988, Why Wouldn't I GDK 988, Why Wouldn't I Translator? Ryagawa TLC. Hedonists, the 5 sovereigns of the Fringe, used to be its protectors. With them around, the Fringe was able to maintain some degree of relevance without being threatened by the other divine dominions nor the Godhunter alliance. But in time, Salaz and Wasir chose to stand with Han Shuo, while Asura had betrayed him and died, only to quickly be followed by Log and Tyre. In a short decade, 3 of the 5 sovereigns had perished, with the other 2 having submitted. The Fringe had seen many years of war, but from today onwards, nobody else could threaten the House of Han any longer. The gigantic avatar formed from 6 types of energies returned to the cauldron of myriad demons. Han Shuo looked below and looked at the remnants. Tyre and Log have died. You guys should scatter now. Slank and Carp bowed respectfully. Since the Godhunter alliance is still in the Fringe, we should be serving you temporarily to fight against them. Why did you ask us to leave? It wasn't just them. Even Log and Tyre's men were hesitant about leaving. As far as they were aware, they should be subordinating themselves to Han Shuo right now, as he was the biggest player in the Fringe. Any other sovereign in this situation would be demanding their allegiance and assimilate them into his army. So they didn't understand why Han Shuo was doing the exact opposite. Smiling coldly, he said, "Pandemonium is more than enough to deal with the Godhunter alliance, so you don't have to waste your energy. The Godhunter alliance is to be allowed to exist for a reason. When they leave later, you should not stop them. Just let them pass. There are many other powerhouses watching for them outside of the Fringe, after all." Is there anything we can do?" Slank said with a look of embarrassment. He felt as tiny as an ant before someone like Han Shuo. It didn't seem like Han Shuo was the least bit worried about the Godhunter alliance's threat against the Fringe. "What can you do?" Han Shuo shook his head with a smile and said, "All you need to do is to live well in the Fringe. Omphalos will stabilize in time, and you may spread the word to the merchants of Omphalos that have gone into hiding that they are free to return after this passes." The next moment, he disappeared from their sight. "The 5 sovereigns no longer exist from today onwards," Slank said blankly. "Lord Brian is far more powerful than they ever were. As long as he stays in the Fringe, it will be his." That isn't bad either. With the Fringe being controlled by a single person, there will no longer be endless war, Carp said after thinking it over. "No matter what, this Lord Brian seems quite decent to his own men. It would be nice if we would be able to serve under his house one day." "Well, only if they think us worthy. There have been many who had tried to join them before the great battle, but they didn't take any in. I had thought that the House of Han was just looking down on people, but I now know that they couldn't be bothered to waste their time on the likes of us. Without Pandemonium, the Fringe would have long fallen to the Godhunter alliance. We have to do our best to earn Lord Brian's favor and become one of them," Carp said. Han Shuo had them fully convinced of his position as the strongest in the Fringe after defeating Log and Tyre. By now, Han Shuo had returned to Omphalos. The loud explosion had reduced Tyre's part of Omphalos to rubble. Only the Godhunters there perished, with Tuckamore and Acer managing to survive but suffering heavy injuries in the process. They could barely even move. During the explosion, the two of them happened to be in that area and weren't able to escape in time before they were swallowed up in the blast. Thankfully, only a part of Omphalos had blown up. If the zones of all 5 sovereigns blew up at the same time, the explosion would be at least 10 times more powerful. Acer and Tuckamore would have probably perished instantly in that case. When Han Shu arrived, he noticed that the remaining hegemons were rapidly leaving Omphalos. The first explosion was so powerful that they didn't dare risk staying in the other parts in case there were more explosions waiting to go off. Tuckamore, Acer, Regis, Isaiah, Miller, Balinton, and Cause were the only 7 hegemons remaining, with the foremost 2 heavily injured and powerless. Regis, Isaiah, and Miller also hadn't recovered fully from the fight at Pandemonium, leaving only Balinton and Cause in peak condition. Han Hao raised his bone spear and blocked the 7 hegemons, coldly staring them down. An eerie mix of negative energies seeped out of his body. It was coming from the quintessence, which he couldn't yet adequately control, but it served to terrify the 7 hegemons. Han Shu's arrival caused them to shrivel in fear. If Han Hao alone was enough to apply so much pressure on them, his father blasted the last traces of their confidence into the ether. "Father, here's all 7. They're all here," Han Hao said. Nodding with a smile, Han Shu turned his gaze to them. "Gentlemen, we meet again. Well, the explosion in Omphalos was all part of Daka and Tyre's plan. The two of them hid tens of thousands of tons of energy crystals underground and had wanted to wipe you all out. But thanks to my interference, you all survived." The hegemons didn't know what to do when facing him now. Their men were still all scattered. If they escaped the fringe by themselves now, their injured men would never be able to take on with Han Shu and Han Hao. "What do you intend to do now?" Isaiah said with a glum tone. Before he came to the fringe, he was feeling on top of the world. But now, he had lost all of his vigor and only wanted to leave this place as far as he could. He didn't want to see the father and son ever again. I wonder?" Han Shu stroked his chin with a smirk. He combined his 6 avatars to show off his power, forming a huge veil in the sky that enveloped all the hegemons within. "I gave you a chance to leave the fringe, yet you dared to continue to cause trouble here. Since that's the case, don't blame me for not showing mercy." He laughed out loud and started closing the veil in. Like an eggshell, it slowly applied the pressure to all 7 hegemons within it. The only ones who could put up any meaningful resistance were Balinton and Cause. The others were either too injured from the explosion or still weak from the battle at Pandemonium, so there was no way they could take him on, especially with Han Hao still nearby. The father and son were now so powerful that they wouldn't be the match of anyone apart from overgods with quintessence. You would dare to kill us." The life hegemon Cause yelled. "The God-Hunter Alliance has existed since antiquity. Even the 12 quintessence overgods acknowledge our presence and didn't touch us, so who are you to dare?" When the goddess of destiny came to Pandemonium, she revealed some hidden truth about the God-Hunter Alliance. It seemed that they had to exist for a reason, which was why the 12 overgods would tolerate them. Even the goddess of destiny didn't wipe them out after her husband was killed by one of their kind. "Why wouldn't I?" Han Shuo clasped his hand and caused Cause's bones to snap, causing him to spit out blood in pain. It seems as though you know something. Very well, very well. Since I'm not able to get the goddess of destiny to reveal anything, I guess I'll have to get them from you." Han Shuo took out the cauldron and sucked Cause into it. As he used it to refine Cause's divine soul, he gathered the power from his fusion avatar to wipe out the other 6 hegemons. "Since the God-Hunter Alliance needs to exist, I won't wipe out all the God-Hunters. I will only get rid of you hegemons and use your souls to help the House of Han grow in power." With a loud crack, the hegemons' bodies fractured, causing their souls to be absorbed into the cauldron as it refined Cause's soul. Chapter 989, Balance GDK 989. Balance Translator. Ryagawa TLC. Hedonist Cause's soul felt like it was being subjected to a strong, windy force inside the cauldron that could extinguish it at any time. The strength of his consciousness, coupled with the cauldron's ability to manipulate souls, allowed Han Shuo to extract all of Cause's life experience, even the memories he'd forgotten. As long as there was some remnant of that remaining, Han Shuo would be able to use soul scoring to reconstruct it. Han Shu's consciousness spread out in Ka's mind like a web that latched onto his soul, digging out memories from the depths of his psyche. Ka's, being a life cultivator of this level, no longer had a set lifespan. In his long life, he had experienced all sorts of defining moments, so it would take Han Shu at least a day or two to properly comb through his memories. Ka's had lived for 10,000 years, after all, so he had an ocean of experiences to speak of. Han Shuo wasn't interested in his daily affairs, nor was he some pervert that enjoyed peeking into his most private moments, so he focused on his target as he searched. Something that pertained to the survival of the God Hunters was no doubt among Ka's most important thoughts, which usually shone brighter than the others. They quickly swept past him before the one Han Shuo wanted surfaced before him. His consciousness wrapped around that deep memory and used soul scoring on it to replay the memories. It was something that had occurred centuries ago, relatively recent by the timescale they lived by. Back then, Kaz hadn't become an over-god nor a god hunter yet, and was a mere tribal chief in the Life Dominion. Not only was he not a god hunter, he was someone who discriminated heavily against them. One time, when he faced off against god hunters in the Life Dominion, he was betrayed by a cousin in his tribe and trapped by the god hunters in a valley. It didn't take long before the tribesmen that came with him were made short work of by the god hunters, including his wife and child, during the time he was held back by other god hunters. He was powerless to do anything as he watched his wife be violated and his son quartered. It was something that was burned into his memories. The hegemon back then was only a late-stage high god, but Kaz was an early-stage high god and had no choice but to take it all without being able to do anything about it. Before this, he was someone who actively hunted down god hunters in the Life Dominion's various cities, which made him their archenemy. However, the hegemon of the Life Dominion managed to capture him, through which Kaz learned something about god hunters. That person had told him that god hunters were something integral to Elysium. Every single god's existence would result in there being too much energy of their respective type. If the type of energy in Elysium surpassed a threshold, the balance of energy will shift and affect the quintessence over gods really negatively. As a result, he told Kaz that god hunters would never disappear from Elysium, as their presence helped cull the number of gods in Elysium to prevent such an event from happening. They were essentially pest control for the quintessence over gods. He denied every justification for Kaz's actions, calling them a fool's errand. The god of life allowed the fights between the gods and god hunters to happen. Even the deaths of his own subordinates wasn't really a bad thing. In the end, Kaz managed to survive. The guards from various cities of the Life Dominion managed to make it in the nick of time and saved Kaz after only a part of his divine power was absorbed. Having lost lots of it, his powers dipped greatly. When he returned home, he saw that his traitorous cousin had taken his place to become the new tribe leader. Needless to say, Kaz was easily defeated and chased out of the tribe. With the betrayal and his family gone and power stripped away, he changed completely and abandoned his faith to the god of life. For vengeance, he became one of the craziest god hunters. He started from consuming the weaker gods and slowly recovered his own divine power. In a century, he managed to kill his cousin as well as the other tribesmen that had turned their backs on him. Even the hegemon that once subjugated him wasn't able to escape. Kaz tortured his soul by burning it with venom flare for 200 years, slowly roasting it away to cause as much suffering as he could. He became the new hegemon of the Life Dominion and quickly grew in power to become an overgod. Han Shu exhaled as he carefully kept Kaz's soul away in a special corner of the cauldron. He used the cauldron's power to wipe out the impurities from his soul, leaving behind only the purest essence of his understanding of the arcane laws of life for Han Mu. Sigh, he's a pitiful soul too. After learning of his experiences, Han Shu no longer felt any hate for Kaz. He was just as much a victim of circumstance and despair. There was no way he would be able to get his revenge after losing his power, after all. Having nothing else to lose after everything was taken away from him, including his years-long fate, it wasn't surprising he did what he did. "Father, is it true that god hunters exist for a reason?" Han Hao asked once Han Shuo transmitted what he could to him. Nodding, Han Shuo said, "Too many gods will cause there to be too much energy. When any of the 12 types grow too much, it will result in something that the quintessence overgods don't like. So, god hunters exist to maintain that balance. Han Xiu immediately recalled the upcoming battle that would come before the opening of Eternia, the goddess of destiny and god of light mentioned, which would cause even more gods to die. Was the death of gods another precondition to the opening of Eternia? A grand battle occurred in Elysium at regular intervals, during which many gods fell. Many talented geniuses perished before they were able to reach their full potential that way. And in all those pivotal moments, the goddess of destiny would show up to cause things to calm down. Back then, Han Xiu didn't know why this kept happening, precisely, why the goddess waited for years of fighting to pass before stepping in to resolve the conflict. Part of the answer to that was found in Ka's memories, which informed some of Han Xiu's own guesses. Balance? Han Hao suddenly said. Father, do you mean that the 12 great overgods tacitly allow the god hunters to exist? I'm sure you've seen how powerful Judas and Nestor are. Either one of them will be able to wipe out all god hunters in the 12 divine dominions. Not to mention, Andrina said that even the goddess of destiny didn't wipe out the god hunters that killed her lover. Andrina herself almost died from being sapped dry, yet the goddess didn't do anything about it. I believe Ka's explanation has merit. There is no reason why the 12 great overgods would tolerate the existence of the god hunters if there wasn't a good reason for them to. So that means even if I unite the god hunters and attack the 12 divine dominions, the 12 great overgods won't meddle in my business. Han Hao said as his eyes glowed. If you operate in their interests, they naturally wouldn't do anything to you. After some thought, Han Xiu continued. However, the gods that live in the 12 divine dominions provide power to them through their faith. Essentially, they need that power but also can't let the number of gods grow too much, striking a fine balance. So, there are limits to how much you can act. Otherwise, the 12 great overgods will turn against you, and we are still not their match, so you have to be careful. Understood, Father. I will do just that. Right that instant, 2 high-pitched whines could be heard approaching from the distance. Soon, Salas and Wasir came to Han Xiu. Salas seemed rather agitated as he said, Brian, the divine guards of the 12 divine dominions are marching into the fringe. It seems that they're here to deal with us and the god hunters. Han Xiu nodded. If they want to maintain balance, the god hunter alliance can't be allowed to grow too powerful. There are probably too many of them right now, so they're trying to cull some numbers. What do we do, Father? Han Xiu looked at the fearful god hunters that had lost their 7 hegemons and said, You're the new leader of the god hunters. You can decide what to do. I believe you should first take them under your wing. Understood. Chapter 990, Hexapolis of the Fringe GDK 990, Hexapolis of the Fringe Translator. Ryagawa TLC. Hedonist. Now that not a single one of the 12 hegemons remained, the god hunters had lost their leaders. They didn't know what would happen to them. Now, they needed someone that could bring new hope to them, and Han Hao fit the bill in terms of actual capability, power, and status as a god hunter. Without wasting too much time, Han Hao unleashed the power of the quintessence, causing the god hunters to all bow and submit to him and cementing his position in the god hunter alliance for good. Father, I might need to leave the fringe for a period of time. I will take them away from the fringe and consolidate my power among the god hunters of the various divine dominions first. The dead hegemons still had many subordinates scattered across the divine dominions who weren't aware of what had happened to their leaders. With them now gone, Han Hao had to rapidly strike down those that would doubt him and take the rest under his wing. Han Xiu nodded with a smile. Go your way, take Polo and the others away too. Be careful when you leave the fringe. Make sure you don't let the city lords from the divine dominions ambush and gang up on you. There's no doubt that quite a lot of god hunters have perished in the fringe, so I believe the 12 overgods will be happy with the outcome. However, that doesn't mean that their followers will stop persecuting the god hunters, so you should know what to do there. Han Hao could use demon generals and his new quintessence. With demon generals, he could easily find out the troop distribution of the various city garrisons across the divine dominions and avoid direct conflict or other troublesome affairs. Then, I'll take my leave now. It might take a while before I come back to visit. I'll have to comprehend the quintessence's power first. Without rambling too much, Han Hao immediately motioned for the god hunters to follow him. He then went to the far end of Omphalos to instruct Polo to gather the other godhunter troops at one spot before leaving the fringe with him. Seeing Han Hao give out orders from afar, Han Shu felt a little unwilling to let him leave. However, he felt more joy than melancholy about the whole affair. He was happy for Han Hao for achieving what he had. As one of the most important family members to him, Han Hao didn't only have the power to protect himself already, he also had the skills to manage others. Only with enough subordinates could he afford to prevail through the endless conflict in Elysium. Soon, Han Hao's presence went further and further away. Han Shuo quelled the emotions he was feeling. Soon, he felt Ackley's presence approaching him. Ackley smiled and said, "Brian, it's all done. The pesky toxin brewers and some other weirdos you wanted me to approach personally are all dealt with. Thanks for the hard work, Ackley. From now on, Celestial Pearl Pharmacy will be the greatest pharmacy in all of Elysium. However, we have to start thinking about how we can build branches in the divine domains. As long as we can do that, we will never run out of black crystal coins." Though their brand was well known enough, they simply didn't have enough talented brewers for their potions. There was no way Han Shu himself could afford to spend too much time and effort on the pharmacy brewing potions, so he needed capable brewers that could man the pharmacy. With the new additions to their team, Han Shu could rest easy in the future. "Father," Han Jin said as he emerged from the underground with Andrina. They seemed to have been involved in the blast, with their clothes slightly torn and faces covered in soot. "Are the two of you all right?" he snapped, surprised at how they looked. While he knew they had unique constitutions, he was still worried that they got hurt from trying to suppress the explosion. "We're fine," Han Jin replied as he shot Andrina a bright look. "Not only that, we also benefited from it. The energy from the explosion didn't harm us at all and instead allowed us to store up on lots of energy in our bodies." Han Shu beamed with joy. He swept his consciousness through the two of them and found that the energy content within them was denser. "Not bad. I knew you two would do fine. Your constitutions and bodies can only benefit from the energy crystal's explosion. Though, it still begs the question what Tyre did to make his part of Omphalos explode. Tyre truly is sneaky. Within every district of Omphalos, he installed detonators that would receive a signal from his soul. But the detonator at his district was fitted with 3 redundant power sources that were really well hidden. The energy waves coming from them were also obscured, so we weren't able to find them in time before Tyre triggered the detonation," Andrina said hatefully. "We're sorry, Father. We failed to stop that explosion," Han Jin said with embarrassment. "You did well enough." Han Shuo didn't blame them and turned to Wasir. "You should have your men move from Glacial Peak to Omphalos. I worry that the guards of the Divine Dominions aren't just targeting the Godhunter Alliance." Wasir's expression changed as he nodded before leaving immediately and contacting his men with his magic mirror. "Sala's Empyrean Peak will belong to you in the future. There will no doubt be many factions remaining in the fringe after this, so take in as many under your wing as you can. I have enough people on my side, so I won't be allowing them to join the House of Han. There is also a chance the fringe will receive more refugees from the Divine Dominions. If you manage to convince them to serve you, they can also come to take shelter at Pandemonium," he promised. Elated, Salas said, "Now that's what friends are for." He knew that if Pandemonium was willing to open its doors, then the leaders of the various factions in the fringe wouldn't hesitate to join with them. Effectively, they would be Han Shuo's men and wouldn't consider joining Salas at all. However, Han Shuo's promise allowed him to gather his own force while also enjoying the benefits of protection in Pandemonium. "I will spread word of the good relationship between the 3 of us in the fringe. I'll also forbid my men from clashing with yours and Wasir's. Ha ha ha, the fringe will be ruled by the 3 of us from now on," Han Shuo said. Shaking his head, Salas said, "Brian, I appreciate the sentiment, but Wasir and I have talked it over. There is only one sovereign of the fringe, and that's you. The 2 of us shall serve the House of Han." "How can that be?" he said, surprised. By now, Wasir had finished communing with his subordinates and returned. "Brian, your power has far outstripped ours. Everyone in the fringe knows that you were the one who resolved this crisis. We have no right to be your equals. Don't refuse this. In the fringe, might is right. You are powerful enough to have earned our respect." Salas nodded heavily in agreement as he laughed. With you at the fringe, even quintessence overgods have to think twice before coming to mess with us. From now on, there is no longer a need for us to fight amongst ourselves. The fringe shall has its own rules of conduct like other large cities. By now, Han Shu knew that he had no choice but to go with the flow. He nodded after giving it some thought. All right, I'll accept it. From now on, Omphalos is no more. I will rebuild it and name it Hexapolis of the Fringe. I will be its city lord, and you will be its chief guardians. The three of our clans shall rule it. Hexapolis of the Fringe? Hexapolis? Salas repeated it for a few times. This name's a little weird, but it sounds impressive. All right, Hexapolis of the Fringe it is, Wasir exclaimed. I'll stay here for now, instead of returning to Pandemonium. I would like to see what the guardians from the 12 divine dominions can do to me when they come. Han Shuo felt that there was no longer anything he had to worry about given his strength now. If even quintessence overgods didn't want to cause trouble for him, there were few others in Elysium that could bother him now. As such, he no longer had to worry about much, and could just focus on gathering demonic energy. A streak of black gas flowed into the ruins of Tyre's former territory and gathered around a few boulders before dragging them over. With a few loud booms, the 10-meter-tall boulders transformed into a smooth monolith and was erected outside a city gate. Black streaks flashed across the monolith's surface, chipping away at smaller pieces of rock loudly. A bit later, a gust of wind blew the dust and small rocky shards away to reveal the words carved into the gate. Hexapolis of the Fringe. Chapter 991, Finding the Way GDK 991, Finding the Way Translator, Ryagawa TLC. Hedonist apart from Han Shuo, Wasir and Salas remained at the Hexapolis to defend it. Wasir had already sent word for his subordinates to temporarily hide out at Pandemonium. Meanwhile, Salas used this time to meet with the various faction leaders in the Hexapolis. Since Han Shuo had proclaimed that he wouldn't be taking anyone into the House of Han, the rest were up to Salas and Wasir to manage. Once Han Shuo's intentions were broadcast, the others who didn't treat Salas as someone worthy began to seriously consider his words. Some of them knew that their faction's might was too weak and wouldn't be able to do much within the Frin, and decided to join Salas instead. Han Shuo spent the next few days in Celestial Pearl Pharmacy to break down the remaining impurities in the souls of the hegemons, leaving only the cultivation insights behind and making them into a few arcane orbs for Han Jin and Andrina to deliver to Pandemonium. Han Shuo had eliminated all the hegemons in the previous clash, resulting in him gaining 11 arcane orbs in total, including those for Han Huo, Han Mu, and Han Shui's use. Apart from those three, Ackley could get one destruction arcane orb made from Tyre's soul. There was also the death arcane orb for Fanny, while Emily would get Acer's dark arcane orb. As for the other destruction arcane orb from Daka, Isaiah's earth arcane orb, Regis's lightning arcane orb, and Miller's wind arcane orb, Han Shuo would keep it for the others in his house. Having been able to operate and expand his Goldstone enterprise to its tremendous scale this day, Han Jin had demonstrated that his intelligence wasn't any bit inferior to Han Hao's. And since he started getting along with Andrina, he began to grow even faster, allowing Han Shuo to leave quite a lot of important matters in his hands. Once Han Jin and Andrina left, Han Shuo remained in Hexapolis, spreading the word to those that came to the Fringe from other territories and drafting the new regulations of the city. With Wasir and Sala's support, Han Shuo became the undisputed ruler of the Fringe. He also took inspiration from the laws of Ethereal City and the City of Shadows to draft new regulations for Hexapolis. He decided to revoke all the despotic laws of Omphalos. From now on, Hexapolis would become the new capital of the Fringe, and gods would no longer have to pay to stay there. They could stay for as long as they wanted. This clash with the God Hunters had resulted in significantly lower traffic to the Fringe. Many powerful gods in the Fringe were either killed by the God Hunters or had temporarily left for somewhere rural to avoid the conflict. To ensure that the Fringe quickly grew prosperous again, Han Shuo implemented quite a number of policy changes, which took him quite a number of days. When everything was back on track, Han Shuo entered seclusion to cultivate in an underground room in the pharmacy Han Tu had made. Since the breakthrough in Pandemonium, Han Shuo realized that the 13 avatars inside the cauldron were incredibly powerful. Each one of those individual avatars could rival overgods without quintessence by their own, but when two of them fused, they would easily dominate normal overgods like Tyre. While the fusion of 6 of them didn't make them more powerful than quintessence overgods, they displayed terrifying power that was able to render Tyre and Log helpless and unable to put up a fight. Given that, if he could fuse all 13 of his avatars, Han Shuo believed that he might even be able to outpower quintessence overgods. It was a shame that 6 was his limit for now. Though he had wanted to test it with the 7th, he hadn't found the chance yet. Not to mention, he had tried the other 7 energies once before, but wasn't able to fuse any of them together, much to his dismay. Sitting alone in the training room, he fused the 6 avatars of destruction, death, darkness, lightning, wind, and water. The forces fused like 6 separate streams flowing into one larger one, giving him a new, more powerful energy. He took a deep breath and began testing out fusing the light avatar with the other 6, only to find that it was repelled right after it combined. Han Shuo wasn't in a hurry, so he gave it repeated tries and attempted to figure out the problem. Gradually, he found that a trace of dark energy was repelling the light energy. It seemed that the energy grew stronger after the fusion of the 6 clones, representing a significant chance that could cause the fusion to collapse. In his many tries, he found that the dark energy pushed away the light energy right after the fusion attempt was made. As he wasn't able to figure out a workaround, he tried fusing other energies instead of light, such as fire, life, space, destiny, earth, and fighting aura. He found that fire was repelled by water while life was repelled by death. While space, destiny, earth, and fighting aura didn't experience any repulsion, they didn't seem to meld together well either. It almost seemed as if polar opposite energies like light and dark, death and life, and fire and water couldn't be fused no matter what. He gave it a little more thought and figured it was hard but probably not impossible. With that in mind, he decided he should focus more of his efforts on space, earth, destiny, and fighting aura. Those 4 energies seemed easy to manage. When he fused using the fighting aura avatar, he felt a little comfortable. While he hadn't managed to achieve successful fusion yet, it felt like it would be rather easy. The total time he trained was just a short 10 days, during which he didn't make any grand breakthroughs, but rather found a clear direction to progress in. He decided he would focus on fusing the aforementioned 4 energies, with extra effort on fighting aura into the sextet energy avatar. As for life, light, and fire, he would leave it for later. Whether it was possible to fuse them was still a question he didn't have an answer for. That day, he left seclusion training and had Wasir and Salas summon those that had joined them to Hexapolis. With his powerful consciousness, he sensed that the guardians of the 12 divine dominions had arrived in the city. "Brian, how many are there?" Salas asked with worry. "They number more than the God Hunter Alliance. But you don't have to worry, numbers don't mean much. I'd like to see how they can take me on." As long as they were within the fringe, Han Shuo and Han Hao's telepathic connection could be maintained. He was told that Han Hao and the God Hunters didn't suffer too many casualties as they left the fringe. Han Hao's message allowed Han Shuo to have a rough idea of the Guardians' forces, but he didn't really take it to mind. The only one he paid attention to was the Keeper of Light, Jayal. Among those that came to the fringe under pretense was McKinley, City Lord of Ethereal City. He was Han Shuo's good friend and had informed him about their arrival beforehand, allowing Han Shuo to have a good grasp on their movements at all times. "Brian, Jayal is here. If possible, I hope you can get rid of him for me," McKinley said. His expression on the magic mirror was one of pure rage. Jayal actually broke through and became an overgod. He's the one who led the campaign here to take on God Hunters in the fringe. "Sai, I'm still not his match yet. I was mocked the whole time I came here, but all I could do was endure his insults the whole time." Apart from complaining, McKinley also revealed all sorts of information about Jayal. Han Shuo rather sympathized with McKinley. He finally escaped after being sealed by Jayal for so long, only to find that he was still not his match. Not to mention, he was forced to join the campaign, only to meet Jayal there and have to endure his harsh treatment without being able to exact revenge. One could only imagine how much rage he felt. Jayal was loyal to the God of Light, who had warned Han Shuo not to touch him back in Pandemonium. However, Hanshu had never been on friendly terms with the god of light since his days in the profound continent, and he wasn't about to begin now. He smiled coldly as he watched the guardians approach. Chapter 992, Come On in GDK 992. Come On in Translator, Ryagawa TLC. Hedonists, the experts from the 12 divine dominions, arrived outside the Hexapolis and temporarily settled on a mountain nearby, silently observing as they discussed what was happening. McKinley's expression was rather glum. His eyes kept darting towards the white-bearded and well-dressed elder of the god of light's shrine, Jayal, as he laughed and chatted with the other guardians from the various dominions. As one of the 3 keepers of the light of the god of light, Jayal was really powerful and a rather active character among the other guardians. Apart from Yaris from the Dominion of Darkness and a few other lead guardians from the Dominions of Death and Destruction, the others were rather careful around Jayal. The Dominions of Light, Life, and Water had always been at odds with those of Destruction, Darkness, and Death. Minor skirmishes were rather common between them, and they were absolute nemeses during the Battle of the Gods. Given their history of rivalry, they could never fully be on each other's side. This time, they had only convened because of the uniting threat of the Godhunter Alliance. Jayal and Yaris had almost gotten into a fight, but it was said that they managed to calm down. After that, their 2 factions stayed apart without offending each other, merely carefully observing one another. Given the tension between the 2 sides, the armies from 6 dominions led by Jayal and Yaris might break out into a fight on the spot once the matter in the fringe was dealt with. They had already occupied their own respective territories, while McKinley stood there by himself, occasionally suffering the indignity of being mocked by Jayal. Hexapolis of the Fringe? Jayal suddenly laughed as he saw those words Hanshu put up at the entrance. They had a name change, huh? Even though they're going to be razed to the ground soon, they're really a bunch of interesting fools. He turned to McKinley from afar and said, "McKinley, do you think that the Godhunter Alliance could have wiped out that friend of yours already? I heard you have a good relationship with that brat called Brian. Didn't you give extra care to the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy branch in Ethereal City? Given that you cultivate space energy, you'll definitely have something to do with it if he ends up surviving, right?" No comment. McKinley humphed without even paying Jayal any heed. "Oh, McKinley, Ethereal City is right next to the fringe. I don't know how you can be so clueless about everything and yet became a city lord," Jayal mocked. "Brian won't be killed that easily. If he's really in the fringe, would you dare fight him alone?" Yaris called out with a laugh. Jayal seemed surprised, as if he hadn't expected Yaris to say something like that. After some thought, he laughed and said, "I heard that Brian had gone to the city of Gorging Clouds before. Ha ha ha, it seemed that you worked with Darkwater and Darkstone to fight him, but I heard you suffered quite a loss." Jayal suddenly stopped and shook his head. "Yaris, it seems that you didn't just stagnate these past few years, but in fact have deteriorated. To think that a nameless brat like that could take care of the 3 city lords of the Dominion of Darkness. I must have overestimated your lot." Yaris smiled without looking the least bit offended. "Oh, really? How about we leave Brian to you later? We'll take care of the rest." Jayal didn't take Hanshu seriously at all. "Just him alone? Ha, I wouldn't even have to personally deal with him. I'll only play with him once he proves himself." "Haha, then I'd like to see how the playing goes when he really shows up. All right, let's go. We're already standing at their doorstep now." "Yaris, is Brian really that powerful?" Talbot, the lord of the city of Wraiths, asked in a whisper. Back then, Hanshu had killed Portlam in his city and proclaimed that he didn't fear any retaliation, causing Talbot to hesitate to act against him. This time around, he took the chance to come to the fringe personally with this expedition with payback in mind. Yaris said in a serious tone, "As Brian hasn't been active in the Dominion of Light, it's no surprise that Jayal doesn't understand his might. However, he's been to the Dominions of Death and Darkness many times before. I believe that back then, he shouldn't be weaker than you one bit. Yet, it didn't matter. If he were weak, I would have been able to wipe him out with Darkwater and Darkstone back then." "Are you confident in defeating him now?" Talbot said, even quieter than before. Yaris shook his head in resignation. "No, I'm not confident even if everyone here fights him with me. I can't figure out that fellow at all. However, Jayal and the rest aren't aware of Brian's power at all. If he's still in the fringe, We'll let Jael take the brunt of his might. Once he gets injured from this, we'll immediately retreat from the fringe and attack Jael." Yaris had used darkness energy to form a barrier around them before this conversation started, so the rest weren't aware of what they were planning. "Can Brian do that?" Talbot asked, shocked. "Just watch." Yaris smiled mysteriously and whispered, "Remember, when Brian shows up and displays his might, we must leave without hesitation and ambush Jael and the rest outside the fringe. I have told our Lord Overgod about this. He said that since the battle of the gods is bound to happen, we should strike first." After some time, the guardians from the 12 divine dominions finally arrived at the great stone gate with the words Hexapolis engraved on them. Jael laughed and loudly announced, "All those inside this cesspool, god hunters or criminals hiding out in the fringe, they deserve annihilation. Today, the God of Light's sacred radiance shall shine upon this filthy place, cleansing it and bringing upon a new dawn." With a loud click, the stone gate opened up, and laughter could be heard coming from within. "Ha ha ha, I've been expecting all of you. Those who come to visit are my guests. Do come in. It's nice to see you two again, McKinley, Yaris. Don't be strangers." "Who are you?" Jael asked haughtily. Those from the other dominions were also confused as to what was happening. Hearing a young voice like that did throw them off. Hegemons were usually middle-aged or elderly people. Nobody that young existed among their ranks. Yaris's expression shifted as he hesitated before he shot Talbot a hidden glance. Feigning a smile, he said, "I didn't think you of all people would be the ruler here. Since you have invited us in, I shall indulge in your hospitality for a drink. However, let me make it clear that we have come to the fringe for the god hunters, not you, so please do not misunderstand." "Brian. You are Brian?" Jael immediately figured out who he was. Now, he seemed hesitant, as if he was confused over something. "Who was the one who proclaimed that he wouldn't have to personally deal with him just now? What's wrong?" "I see that you haven't gone in yet. Feeling scared?" McKinley said, venting his pent-up frustrations. "Shut up," Jael said as he glared at McKinley. "You are inferior to me, so don't you dare mock me." He humphed and glared at the rest before leaving, his followers tagging behind him. Yaris smiled when he noted the fear Jael was displaying. The fact that there were no god hunters around meant that they had been defeated, ostensibly, by the current ruler. "Be careful, Talbot. We'll leave the divine guards outside and enter by ourselves. Our aim isn't the same as Jael's. We don't have to linger here and we'll be leaving the moment the tables turn," Yaris reminded. Talbot, who had sworn to seek vengeance against Han Shuo, dropped it entirely when he noted Yaris's attitude. He knew he wasn't Yaris's match, so how could he possibly defeat someone even Yaris was wary against? They all slowly approached the recently renamed Omphalos with their own aims and goals. The only one who didn't seem to show any fear was McKinley, who knew that Han Shu wouldn't harm him. That was why he dared to lead the way. The moment they entered, McKinley saw Han Shu with Salas and Wasir in the middle of the wide street. There was nobody else apart from the three of them, but they all smiled calmly. McKinley merely nodded slightly and gestured with his eyes to tell him which one was Jael. Though, Han Shu could already tell who it was without needing to be informed with his current power. Besides, it was easy to see which among them was the biggest arsehole. Chapter 993, Even Stronger GDK 993, Even Stronger Translator, Ryagawa TLC. "Hedonist, so you are Brian? Ha ha ha, you look like a young squirt for someone so bold," Jael said with a cold chuckle as he made his entrance after McKinley. "Long time no see. I didn't think you'd have become the new Lord of Omphalos. I knew you were destined for greatness," Yaris said with a solemn look. The whole time, he made sure to keep a good distance from Jael and even more from Han Shuo. Han Shuo ignored Jael and instead smiled at Yaris, finding it a little weird how even though he was the one who killed Yaris's brother, Lakrisen, not to mention the slaughter at the city of Gorging Clouds. Yet the first thing Yaris did after seeing him this time wasn't to seek vengeance, which was not something he expected at all. "Even though I was the one who killed Lakrisen, you're saying that you're only here to deal with the god hunters. Do you really mean it?" Feeling his chest tighten, Yaris feigned a smile and nodded. "Whether you believe it or not, I really don't plan on taking revenge." He had received instructions from the god of darkness about this matter some time ago and wouldn't dare disobey them no matter how unwilling he felt. "So where are the god hunters?" Jaal said with distaste when he saw that Han Shu had ignored him. Han Shu finally set sights on Jaal and recalled the god of light's words. After paying attention to him for a while, he noticed that Jaal was a religious zealot. The wild air of fervor he gave off was due to his intense faith for the god of light. Though he was dressed in a clean, white robe, he didn't seem the least bit tranquil. Instead, he looked like he would explode with the slightest disturbance. Like McKinley had said, Jaal wasn't born in Elysium and used to be among the most maniacal believers of the god of light in some backwater place. He had killed endlessly for his faith and grew it at the same time, eventually earning him the attention of the god of light, who bestowed him a divine stigma. His powers soared greatly as a result, making him the first light cultivator in the small continent he had come from to become a midgod. His achievements impressed the god of light so much that he was sent to various major expeditions across different planes. Jaal's fanaticism had never failed the god of light's expectations as he culled the minor religions across those planes and spread his faith far and wide. In the end, Jaal was instructed to come to Elysium. Like before, he performed to the god of light's satisfaction and spent only 5 centuries to become a high god, quickly becoming a rising star in the dominion of light. There were many legends about Jaal, though all of them made sure to highlight how unique he was. He had never been someone who was well-versed in sneaky tactics, always relying on nothing but his intense and zealous power to crush his enemies, making him out to be the most reckless and forceful of the 3 keepers of the light. Han Shu recalled everything he knew about Jaal and was just as impressed by his genius. It appeared that only those that devoted their entire being to the god of light would draw his attention and favor. It was no surprise that Han Shuo was warned not to mess with him. "Didn't you meet any when you came over?" Han Shuo said amicably. "We have chased the God Hunter Alliance out of the fringe. Now, we are God Hunter free. Gentlemen, you are welcome to visit at your leisure, but if you intend to wipe the fringe out, then I'm afraid I'll have to show you out." "Where is Han Hao?" Jaal asked. "I heard he's a God Hunter too. Hand him over and tell us where his men are. Only then will we consider whether we should ignore your cesspool and let you rot on your own terms." If not for the fact that Jaal didn't have a full grasp on Han Shu's power, he would have had his men kill everyone within the city without even bothering to talk. But even though he knew Han Shu wasn't someone who could be easily dealt with, he couldn't change his temper at all and said it in a way like he was giving him orders. It was as if nobody else but the god of light and those of his faith mattered. The rest could all die for all he cared. Han Shu had never intended to spare Jaal in the least. The moment he was demanded to hand Han Hao over, his expression grimmed. Chuckling sinisterly, he said, "What's the meaning of this, Jaal? Do you think you have any leverage to negotiate with me?" As far as he was concerned, he was on the same level as the god of light, so being threatened by someone beneath him ruffled his feathers badly. Jaal's rage was simmering over. "Ha ha ha ha! Over these past 1,000 years, I have never feared anyone apart from the quintessence over gods. Yet, you were the first ever person to dare act so arrogantly before me. Very well. Now, even if you hand Han Hao over, I will still make sure you perish." Unlike the crafty Yaris, Jaal was the kind of person to attack without thinking. Sacred light burst out from his body as holy Aurum armor formed over his body. Then, holy energy emanated from his body and the olive branch in his hand, putting a great pressure on everyone there. Jaal had always had a short fuse which made him unsuited to ruling a city, but a great warrior. He was famous throughout Elysium for being the strongest of all 3 keepers of light. "Don't worry, you'll never ever run into anyone that dares to act arrogantly before you ever again," Han Shu said. He wasn't surprised at the level of power Jaal displayed. It was only natural for someone with such a deep faith to possess holy Aurum armor as well. Without waiting for the olive branch to fully unleash its power, Han Shu willed his 6 avatars to come out of the cauldron and fuse and expand his domain of divinity to envelope the whole fringe in an instant. The moment the ethereal, gigantic Han Shu opened his arms, he caused bolts of lightning and countless icicles that glowed an odd gray to fall and strike Jaal. It only took one barrage for the holy Aurum armor to crack and shatter. The gray pillar of light came crashing down after only a little holy light gathered at the tip of the olive branch. That instantly caused Jael's body to explode, sending shards of gold all over the place along with his flesh. With a stretch of his hand, Hanshu tried to take his soul into the cauldron of myriad demons. However, a white and holy light shone from Jael's soul and emitted an ear-piercing sound before forming into the most common sort of light and shooting towards Hanshu. His expression changed when he felt the power of quintessence from the white light. The light was probably thanks to the divine stigma the god of light left on Jael. It was sheltering Jael's soul and attacking Hanshu's avatar. It dawned on him that the god of light must have left this attack dormant within Jael's soul after their encounter in Pandemonium. The sword of light seemed almost unavoidable, so all Hanshu could do was try to form a gray net with the power from his fusion avatar to catch it. He focused all his attention on catching it as if it were a fearsome foe. All of a sudden, his fighting aura avatar shook, while the light avatar absorbed a part of the light that resulted from Jael's explosion. Surprisingly, those two avatars actually fused into a single avatar for some reason. Shortly after, the life, fire, space, destiny, and earth avatars combined with the light-fighting aura avatar. Now the new gigantic avatar with the combined powers of light, fighting aura, life, fire, space, destiny, and earth formed another net to catch the sword of light. A genius indeed. He used the power of my quintessence for another breakthrough. Brilliant, it seems that the day Eternia opens is not far off. The god of light's voice could be heard coming from the light as it stopped attacking Hanshu and disappeared instantly with Jael's soul. It had ended just as abruptly as it had started. Hanshu felt a strange sensation as he gazed at the two gigantic avatars that seemed to be antithesis of each other. He had wanted to fuse all the energies together one at a time, and did not think there was a better route given the polar nature of certain energies like light and darkness, and so on. Yet it didn't seem that the energies of light, life, and fire repelled each other, and fighting aura seemed rather similar to light as well. Coupled with the power of the quintessence acting as a catalyst, the 7 avatars whose energies didn't seem to synergize with each other actually fused into another avatar. On one hand, he had a composite avatar of death, destruction, darkness, water, lightning, and wind, and on the other was one of light, fighting aura, life, fire, earth, destiny, and space. Though their qualities were different, their absolute power was without question. "Since the God Hunters aren't here, we shan't be disturbing you," Yaris suddenly said, disrupting Hanshu's train of thought and signaling Talbot to leave. Chapter 994, Reconstruction, GDK 994. Reconstruction Translator. Ryagawa TLC. Hedonists, they had been completely terrified by Hanshu. Jael, one of the 3 keepers of the light, had been famous in Elysium for being the top fighter of the god of light. He had struck down many powerful experts and was feared and respected by many. Yet Hanshu had managed to strike down this very person without even breaking a sweat. And that still wasn't the worst part. Yaris, being the wise guy that he was, could immediately tell that it was the god of light who intervened after Jael's body was destroyed. The white light from the god of light that came out of Jael's soul wasn't able to harm Hanshu at all and even praised him before leaving. If even the god of light didn't kill Hanshu immediately for the transgression of killing his most faithful servant, the other gods stood even less of a chance. The thought of the slaughter Hanshu had engaged in within the dominions of death and darkness, and the response of their respective quintessence overgods made Yaris realize something that caused him to feel a chill down his spine. Talbot finally knew why Yaris was so wary of Hanshu now. After hearing his cry, he immediately retreated and no longer held the slightest trace of his desire to seek vengeance against him, completely relegating Hanshu's rampage at the city of wraiths to the back of his head. The two of them exchanged glances before focusing their full attention on Hanshu as they took one slow step after another out of the Hexapolis, fearing his attack. They might not be able to leave this place alive. The other guardians from other dominions began to shiver in fear from seeing Jael killed in an instant. They felt even more terrified when the god of light's presence vanished after saying praise of Hanshu. Eventually, some of them couldn't help but say, "Since the God Hunter Alliance isn't here anymore, there's no reason for us to be as well. We won't disturb you any longer. We have only come to deal with the God Hunters, after all." We don't intend to make Pandemonium our enemy, so we shall take our leave here. We have other matters to attend to, so no need to see us off." They all gave their excuses to leave after Yaris did, slowly backing away towards the exit of the city. McKinley was the only one who didn't move a step, standing excitedly as he looked at Jael's blood. "He's finally dead. Just like that. It's finally over." Han Shuo, who had been bathing in elation for his avatar's sudden breakthrough, snapped out of it when Yaris bid his farewell. However, he didn't really pay attention to them and remained standing on the spot pondering. The 12 chief guardians of their respective dominions were all powerful in their own right. Yaris and a few others were even over gods, not that Han Shuo would take them seriously. The reason he didn't wipe them out was that he didn't want to anger the quintessence over gods that backed them. Not to mention, he had heard Yaris and Talbot's conversation earlier. With the Battle of the Gods about to start, Han Shuo couldn't wait for them to leave and wouldn't cause them any trouble. He wouldn't be participating in that grand battle, feeling that it was better for him to lay low for now. With that in mind, he let Yaris and the rest leave while he continued to feign deep thought. Yaris and the rest, seeing that Han Shuo wasn't paying attention, moved a bit faster as they left. Once they were finally out, they immediately turned tail and zipped away as fast as they could. Almost immediately, the leaders left the fringe with the rest of the guardians faster than they came in for the fear that Han Shuo would change his mind and come after them. "Brian, are you just going to let them leave like that?" Wasir asked. Relaxing his stiffened expression, Han Shuo smiled. "They have quintessence over gods backing them. A few of them even have stigmas from them. It isn't wise to keep them in the fringe at this point in time. They will eventually fight among themselves anyway, so why should I waste my energy?" "You mean to say that they will go to war with each other soon?" Salas asked, shocked. "Of course, just wait and see. Once they leave the fringe, they will begin to fight. Haha, I didn't think that we would usher in the Battle of the Gods." At this moment, McKinley took a deep breath and bowed. "I will maintain neutrality and not participate in that battle. Brian, I have you to thank for resolving my centuries-long grudge." Waving at McKinley, Han Shuo said, "You don't have to go that far, given our friendship. McKinley, you should hurry back to Ethereal City soon. The battle might affect it, so you have to be prepared for it." "Understood." McKinley nodded before he thought in silence. Turning back to Han Shuo with a solemn look, he continued, "Brian, Jael's soul hasn't been eliminated yet. Was that white light that took him really the god of light? Of course, you shouldn't think too much about this. If the god of light decided to protect his soul, there's little I can do about it. However, Jael fared far worse than you did. Back then, your soul and divine body had only been separated, but Jael's divine body was now completely vaporized. In a way, your grudge is now resolved. I am more than satisfied with how things turned out. Only, I am a little worried about you. The god of light definitely has his eyes on you now. Will you be all right?" He furrowed his brow as he paused. "I really don't know how you cultivated to the point of being able to wipe Jael out so easily. It's best that you don't overthink this matter. Don't worry, I can protect myself. It's best you go back soon to defend your city." "All right, I'll take my leave now. Take care, Brian." He didn't say anything else and immediately went where Yaris and the others had gone. By stunning the invading guardians with his nigh-impossible feat, Han Shuo managed to resolve the threats easily. "Haha, the fringe won't be in any danger for the time being. We still have to rebuild the Hexapolis. I will go back to Pandemonium for now, so I'll need you guys to stay here. Just use the magic mirror to contact me if there are any issues and I'll come immediately," Han Shuo instructed, now that he had the luxury of getting things done without having to worry about the threats. "All right, we will gather the other gods in the fringe and have them help manage the place according to your plans. Just rest assured, we will make sure nothing goes wrong here," Salas said with a laugh. He seemed to be in a rather good mood. From that day onwards, conflict in the fringe substantially decreased. Without the sneaky Tyre, Log, and Asura around, they could finally manage the fringe properly. Once the Battle of the Gods began, many more people might come to the fringe, giving it new life. It might even grow even more powerful than before. "Brian, go deal with what you have to," Wasir said. "All right, I'll leave this place to the two of you." He left without saying much else. At his consciousness's current level, he would even be able to feel the presence of enemies all the way from Pandemonium, without needing Wasir or Salas to inform him, so he wasn't worried in the least. Soon, Han Shu returned to Pandemonium. The 5 elite zombies managed to restore some former semblance to the ruins, with most of the crevices in the ground now gone, causing the eternal fog to once more form within. Han Shu began the reconstruction once he arrived, first having the 5 elite zombies to change some of the mountainous layout as he imagined them before using his power to forcefully alter the natural laws. He even moved large swathes of earth to fill in the seas and collected all sorts of material that he lacked. With his realm's state at the Diablo realm and the power of his 13 avatars, he was stronger than he had ever been. He began to focus his efforts on installing the 9th realm mystical Yin harvester. Something like that could rob so much elemental yuan from the surroundings that it could even drag Han Shu into this world from another universe. If it was constructed in Elysium, a place with energy that was hundreds of times denser and countless times abundant, it was surely to be unmatched. It represented a tremendous undertaking. Han Shu utilized the 5 elite zombies' powers and his own insights from his new realm to gather resources from all over the fringe. The areas near Ethereal City, as well as the Dominion of Destiny, to fill Pandemonium without regard for how many black crystal coins he had to spend. Time quickly passed, and Pandemonium had changed quite a lot, incorporating much of the mountains and lakes next to it as it expanded to 5 times its former size. The climate in Pandemonium had also changed considerably, with lightning bolts and strong snow being common sights. It gradually turned into among the grandest places in Elysium as the Battle of the Gods began. Chapter 995, 10 years GDK 995, 10 years translator, Ryagawa TLC, hedonist 10 years passed in a flash. Han Shu, with the 5 elite zombies' help, managed to finally construct a 9th realm mystical Yin harvester in Elysium. The day the fruits of their labor were ready to harvest, all the negative energies and yuan energy gathered around the clouds above Pandemonium as if they were being sucked in by the formation. The Pandemonium had now grown to 10 times its size before the war. One look across, and one would be able to see huge mountains piercing into the skies like swords. The few palaces standing in their midst seemed to be filled with traces of energy that almost seemed visible under the moonlight. Thanks to the energy gathered by the formation, cultivators within Pandemonium could feel how much denser the various energies were. It almost felt like they were leaning back pleasantly in a sea of various energies. There was an amber-colored room in the center of the 9th realm mystical Yin harvester that looked like the purest of crystals that continued to give off a magnificent radiance. Within it, Han Shu remained quietly seated and unmoving as a haze of smoke circled his body. When the 9th realm mystical Yin harvester began to work, it would start gathering the negative energies in the surroundings without stopping, which could be converted into demonic yuan that Han Shu could absorb at a rate hundreds or thousands of times faster. Without the formation, Han Shu would take thousands or tens of thousands of years to bring his body's demonic yuan to the Diablo realm. But now, he could shorten that time up to 1,000 times. As the continent with the densest yuan energy, Elysium had a huge concentration of energy that could be funneled by the formation into Pandemonium. Thanks to this sudden influx of power, Han Shu's body strengthened at a staggering rate as it converted the negative energies. Demonic yuan seeped through each and every cell in his body, changing it as it flowed through his veins. Han Shu's main body had been absorbing energy like that non-stop, using the cauldron of myriad demons as the focal point of the formation, helping him advance through leaps and bounds. A decade soon passed, and conflict was now present all across Elysium. Ever since Yaris and Talbot attacked the guardians of the dominions of life and light once they left the fringe, the battle between the dominions of light, life, water, destruction, darkness, and death had begun for good and lasted 10 whole years. While that time was quite long from the point of view of a normal man, it was but a blink of an eye for the nigh ageless gods. There had only been small skirmishes during the past decade without any real grand battles. It was as if the conflict was building up towards something even bigger. The other divine dominions didn't participate in the battles like before and chose, instead, to observe and perhaps secretly influence the situation to turn the situation to their benefit. The fringe had changed a lot during that time. The Hexapolis had long been rebuilt, and under the House of Han, Wasir, and Sala's management, it grew prosperous again. No matter what gods come to the city, they wouldn't be charged a single black crystal coin to be allowed to remain. Though, it still wasn't enough time for the city to recover completely from the previous conflict. Even so, it was still a good omen for the future to come. The battles that had been ongoing also caused a lot of rogue gods to flee to the fringe as refugees. With the situation of Elysium in near constant flux, tensions were high. Han Shu ordered those in the fringe to not interfere with external affairs and take care of their own turf. With his help, the members of the House of Han improved by leaps and bounds. Many of them managed to break through a realm. Fanny, Emily, and a few others who received over-god souls improved at an even crazier pace with Han Shu's divine elixir. Now, they were currently at the mid-stage high-god realm, and at this trend, they would break through to become overgods soon. Nowadays, the power of the House of Han greatly outstripped that of all other great clans in Elysium. If they were to get into a fight with any capital city of any of the divine dominions, they would surely win. After word of Han Shu killing Jayal a decade ago spread throughout, the various gods in Elysium were made aware that another being as powerful as a quintessence overgod existed. Han Shu had been elevated to their level as a result. As Han Hao, who became the leader of the God Hunter Alliance, he had been nowhere to be seen in the past decade. It was as if he had vanished. Nobody knew his whereabouts at all, though God Hunters in general did still pop up from time to plague the divine dominions. Apart from the 3 quintessence overgods who had met Han Hao in person, few actually knew that he had developed his own quintessence to become the 13th quintessence overgod. All that coupled together showed a sign that a storm was brewing in Elysium. That day, a soul figure stepped into the dominion of death. The moment he took a step in, he felt an odd energy pulse. But instead of immediately taking defensive measures, he halted. It was as if he was standing there, waiting for something to happen. Moments later, a head appeared in mid-air formed from the purest death energy into Nestor's visage. He looked down on the young man who had stepped into his domain emotionlessly and said, "You've come, Brian." That was Han Shu indeed, but not his main body, but rather the amalgamate of his 13 avatars. There was a fine line across the middle of his head that looked like a long scar. It was as if it had been split into 2. The skin on the left half was white as jade and looked saintly and benevolent, while the skin on the right was dark and venomous. The whole time, Han Shuo had been trying to unite the 6 fusion and 7 fusion avatars together, but simply couldn't find a way. After 10 years of arduous effort, the best he could do to reduce the rejection between 2 polar opposite avatars was to use the power of space to split them in the middle before fusing them. This forcefully smushed together body was still actually considered 2 parts. When he wasn't paying attention, bursts of energy from the mutual rejection would cause the 2 halves to conflict once more. However, that was exactly the way he wanted it. He hoped that he would be able to find a way to unite them by observing these rejection reactions. "Nestor, why did you send word to get me to come here?" he calmly asked. A year ago, someone came from the dominion of death to Pandemonium to hand Han Shu the seal of Nestor. Once he unsealed it, he found that it was an invitation to talk in the dominion of death. As his main body was still absorbing energy nonstop in the middle of the formation, he couldn't come in person, so he sent his fusion avatar instead. "This isn't your body, is it?" Nestor asked after some observation. Han Shuo furrowed his brow and chuckled. "Nestor, you can't have asked me to come to do me ill, can you?" Now that he considered himself Nestor's equal, he spoke casually without caring about formalities. Back in Pandemonium, Nestor had intended to harm Han Hao. Had it not been for the fact that he grew powerful all of a sudden and Han Hao got his own quintessence, Nestor might have really killed him. That left quite a bad taste in Han Shuo's mouth, hence the lack of respect. "If I wanted to deal with you, I wouldn't have bothered waiting till now," Nestor calmly replied. "Back when you captured Hill's soul, I knew you were in the dominion of death. I could have killed you 10 years ago, instead of letting you grow for the past 10 years. Hearing that, Han Shuo could finally be certain that the gods of death and darkness were definitely aware of Han Shuo's presence in their territories. The reason they didn't act against him was perhaps they needed part of his power to aid them open Eternia or something. All right, then why did you seek me out? Hanshu said, now relaxed. You killed Jael, so the god of light will no longer make an effort to make peace with you, given his personality. The battle of the gods this time around will involve every divine dominion. Even the dominions of space and destiny will be enveloped in furious battle. While the fringe is a little smaller, it can still be considered one. What are your plans? Hanshu found the question rather weird. Are you saying you want me to join you? Back then, you cultivated the energies of death and destruction. That is your true nature, and you don't get along well with the god of light, so why not stand with us? But don't be in a hurry to agree or decline. Come to the dominion of darkness. The three of us will meet you in person soon to talk to you about it and some other matters. Worry not, you definitely stand to gain from this. After some thought, Hanshu said, All right, I'll wait for the other two to come and we'll talk. Naturally, they were referring to the gods of destruction and darkness. Chapter 996, Asai GDK 996. Asai Translator. Ryagawa TLC. Hedonist, the god of death Nestor, didn't continue the conversation with Hanshu and instead vanished, leaving Hanshu feeling rather odd about the situation. Back then, after rescuing his family and escaping from the dominion of death, he was still a little worried if Nestor would still seek him out at the fringe and deal with him on account of Hill and Shatio. Although he had a few guesses, he couldn't be certain. Yet, decades later, he actually made a return to the Dominion on Nestor's invitation. Not only was he not worried about Nestor digging up old grievances, he could even talk to him normally. It would have been unimaginable to him back then. When he thought about it, the only reason he could talk with Nestor as equals was the fact that he was now on a wholly different level, earning Nestor's acknowledgement. The reason Nestor had left him alone the whole time was because he felt that he still had some value, though he didn't take him that seriously yet, hence him having not shown up before him at that time. It appeared that it was only through gaining power that one could change one's status and fate, and having true peace of mind. Hanshu smiled and shook his head, abandoning that train of thought as he made his way to the Dominion of Darkness at a leisurely pace. He had many acquaintances there, for instance, the citizens of the City of Shadows, namely Erebus, Andre, Ayabashi, Carmelita, and so on. Apart from that, there was Donna from Hushville City. The thought of Donna always sent a pang of guilt through him. The meeting with the gods of destruction, darkness, and death would take place in the Dominion of Darkness, so Hanshu intended to visit his acquaintances in the meantime before heading to Hushville City to have a good talk with Donna. After making up his mind, he flew a little faster, all the while working to fuse the energies of his two avatars. Meanwhile, at the Saint household in the City of Shadows, Erebus, Andre, Carmelita, and Ayabashi were discussing the battle of the gods in hushed voices. Ever since Wallace had been killed at the City of Gorging Clouds, Andre took up the position of City Lord of the City of Shadows. While he wasn't as powerful as Wallace, he was great at managing city affairs. In the past years, the city had developed considerably under his watch. Andre's charisma and amiability allowed him to deepen his relationships with the other great households, and unlike Wallace, didn't push the other households away just because they were powerful and could be a threat to his reign. It was thanks to Andre's qualities that the city had developed even further. Unlike Wallace, violent conflict didn't break out often in the city. However, him being relatively weaker had impeded his authority somewhat. The patriarchs of the major households in the city weren't too respectful towards him because he couldn't dominate them in brute strength. If not for the fact that Andre was personally appointed by the god of darkness to be the city lord, they might have long attempted to work together and depose him. Yaris had sent word for us to gather all the guardians to prepare for a joint attack from the dominions of light, life, and water. Sounds like they are planning something huge rather than a simple probing attack. Andre seemed rather troubled. After some hesitation, he said, However, the Kinson, Kisa, and Buller families all have their own plans and don't intend to utilize the forces of their household so soon. They are hoping that someone else will take the brunt of the attack and are going against my orders. Things really are tough. Carmelita humphed her displeasure. Those fellows are going more and more overboard. I think we should make it clear where the authority lies and even use force if we have to. Andre started and hesitated. After a pause, he sighed. Carmelita, I know what you mean, but the three families are rather powerful. It isn't the right time to act against them when we're in such a critical juncture. Do you think we're powerful enough to pull them in line? Carmelita shut up after hearing that, though she looked rather grim. No matter how reckless she was, she knew that the Saint family could no longer overpower the three other families. Not to mention, this was the time when they needed to unite the most. If the Saint family really did something like that, they might end up angering the god of darkness and lose his favor entirely. While the heads of the three other families weren't really obedient to Andre, they at least had to maintain a semblance of respect for him and didn't dare to act against the Saint family. All thanks to the message from the god of darkness that Yaris had relayed. They feared the overgod rather than the Saint family themselves. Oh well, we can only endure this. Once it all passes, I will enter seclusion to cultivate. As long as I reach the late stage, those three will settle down, Andre said. We have to make sure that we stay united at all costs. We can't afford otherwise. But the unity simply won't hold. If they don't obey your directives, we will be unable to consolidate the city's strength. If Yaris comes asking about it later, we will be the ones to take the fall. The god of darkness might even fault us for it too, Erebus said. Then what can we do? Andre said with a hint of desperation. I heard that Brian is doing pretty well for himself in the fringe and even managed to get rid of someone as powerful as Jael. If he does come to the City of Shadows, those folks won't even dare to let out a single fart, Ayabashi whispered after some hesitation and careful glances. The moment she said that, Carmelita and Andre's expressions changed. Carmelita yelled, Why did you bring him up? Didn't we say that we will never mention that name ever again? Sigh, we can't blame Brian for that, Erebus muttered, having always been rather close to Ayabashi. No matter what, that doesn't change the fact that the Saint family, my father especially, treated him very well. Yet, he didn't even spare my father. I don't want to hear the name of someone so sinister ever again, she snapped. That's right. No matter what, Big Brother was killed by him. Even if we used to have a good relationship, we can never get along ever again, Andre growled uncharacteristically. Then why did the City of Shadows not take part in the plan Yaris suggested to kill Brian in the fringe? Ayabashi asked. Andre and Carmelita didn't say a single word, but their expressions were terrifying. Sighing inwardly, Ayabashi didn't say anything else. She knew better than anyone that the grudge between them and Han Shuo wasn't something that could be resolved with just words. Before Han Shuo killed Wallace, he was the best of friends with Andre and Carmelita. Yet, when Wallace wanted to deal with him, those two crossed family boundaries to defend him from Wallace and even helped the Han family on various other occasions. However, Wallace had undeniably died at Han Shuo's hands. This was a conflict so complex that even Ayabashi had no resolution to. It wasn't that she and Erebus hadn't tried to talk the other two out of it, but they had decided that Han Shuo shouldn't have killed Wallace no matter what and had never forgiven him for it. Just then, a long sigh could be heard coming from the outside. It sounded really sentimental, but seemed to slowly fade away into the distance. Who goes there? The guards of the Saint family yelled. They were within a secret meeting room, access to which was forbidden to anyone and everyone. So, the innocuous sigh provoked the strongest of reactions from the guards as they armed up to track the person down. Andre, Carmelita, Erebus, and Ayabashi were all stunned when they heard the familiar voice. After a long moment, Erebus stood up suddenly and said, Was I hallucinating? I think I heard Brian's voice. It can't be. He should be in the fringe now. There's no way he'd show up here. Erebus, you're too tense these days, Ayabashi said, before she snapped alert too. Wait, I also heard it too, so it can't have been a hallucination. But there's no way Brian can be here now. It must just be someone who sounds similar. Let me go out to take a look. Just as she got up and was about to go outside, Carmelita snapped, It's him. It's definitely him. She was biting her lip so hard that she almost bled. Andre also stood up abruptly as if he had thought of something. He turned to look at Carmelita before slowly sitting back down. Let's leave him be. Let him leave. How could we? Ayabashi said. That person probably heard what we said. If it isn't Brian, then we have to find out who he is. If he is Brian, even if you don't want to meet him, Erebus and I do. We're still his friends. If he's in the city, we'll meet him no matter what." Ayabashi turned to Erebus, who quickly nodded and agreed. However, they didn't leave immediately and instead paid attention to how Andre and Carmelita would react. Chapter 997, Old Acquaintance and Ruins GDK 997. Old Acquaintance and Ruins Translator. Ryagawa TLC, Hedonist Carmelita and Andre both fell silent. They seemed to ignore what Erebus and Ayabashi had said without expressing any disagreement or approval. The other two exchanged glances before Ayabashi cleared her throat. "Let me go out to take a look then." She went out without caring if they approved of it or not. "Sigh, we can't really blame Brian for what happened back then either. The city lord had forced his hand. Back at the city of Gorging Clouds, the city lord had intended to deal with Brian, so he had no other choice. That's why." Erebus couldn't bring himself to finish what he was saying when Carmelita glared at him. No matter the circumstances, Wallace was dead, and as a consequence, she and Andre suffered for it. Shaking his head and sighing, Andre smiled in resignation. How dare he come? Even if we don't deal with him, Yaris wouldn't let this chance off. Not to mention, this is the domain of darkness. I wonder if the Lord Overgod will notice his presence and blame us on it. Ever since Andre became the city lord, he began considering the bigger and much more complex picture compared to Carmelita, who was solely focused on Han Shuo's debt with their family. Based on the current tumultuous state of Elysium, it was really inappropriate for Han Shuo to come to Elysium alone. Carmelita clicked her tongue as she hesitated, before turning to Erebus and saying, "You should go too. If it's him, chase him away." "I'm not powerful enough to do that," Erebus said with a chuckle. She seemed a little agitated when she said, "We don't wish to see him. There's no point for him to come to the Dominion of Darkness either, so get him to leave." It was only then that Erebus felt that he heard a hint of what she meant. He gave her a suspicious look and turned to Andre, who secretly nodded at him. Seemingly understanding something from that, Erebus nodded back and said, "I'll chase him away if I see him then." He gave them one last look before leaving, and when he was gone, Carmelita heaved a sigh. Why is he here? Isn't he doing well in the fringe? It shouldn't be a big deal. The last time, he was able to make it out of the Dominion of Darkness, so this time should be no different, Andre said after some hesitation. On the sides of the streets of the City of Shadows were countless shops. Ayabashi left the Saint household and walked along the streets on her own without saying a single word. The guardians in the city recognized her and immediately sought her out for instruction, thinking that an incident had occurred within the city. Ayabashi simply waved them away. Soon, she noticed that Erebus had come out after her with a smile. "What's going on?" he asked Erebus. "Nothing much. I was able to tell that both Carmelita and Andre still see him as a friend. They just can't appear to be too close to him because of Wallace's death." Hearing that, Ayabashi nodded and knew what she had to do. The two of them went to a quiet alley where the branch of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy used to be. For some reason, after the House of Han left the city, that patch of land was kept empty. Nobody could buy it from the Saint family. It seemed rather dirty from lack of cleaning thanks to all the dust that gathered, but the two of them didn't really seem to mind it as they entered. Han Shuo's exploits within the Dominion of Darkness were hardly unknown. As a result, nobody dared to damage that area. Many powerful elites in the city held a semblance of respect for the place, and even the heads of the three major families in the city had instructed their descendants to not vandalize the area, which spoke a lot for their respect for Han Shuo, as they weren't nearly as strict when it came to dealing with the Saint family. Within, Ayabashi and Erebus found someone standing within, smiling at them as they came. "It's been a long time, Brian," Ayabashi said. "Haha, it was you after all. I knew my ears wouldn't fail me," Erebus said with a beaming smile as he hugged Han Shuo tightly. He knocked on Han Shuo's back a few times before finally letting go. "What's wrong? Did you get hurt? Why is there such a long scar on your face? You could heal all of Carmelita's wounds, but not your own." The line separating his two halves was too obvious. If he wasn't dressed, the two of them would see that the line actually extended down to his body and radiate spatial energy. "It's only a minor wound. It's no big deal," Han Shuo said, not going into detail about it. He sighed and asked, "Do they still hate me?" Erebus and Ayabashi didn't know how to respond to that. I knew it would end up like that. It's no surprise that they can't forgive me. Because of Wallace, many guards of my household were killed. He even wanted to kill me. If I didn't kill him, the House of Han would be no more, so I had no choice. He sighed and forced a smile. I only came to visit you all this time around. If they don't wish to see me, then forget it. It's not like what you think. Andre and Carmelita still see you as friends and are concerned about you. However, the whole city knows that you killed Wallace, and if they get along well with you, the rest of the Saint family won't let them off the hook for it. They were even worried for your safety, especially from Yaris. Erebus explained, before he looked overhead, seemingly worried about something. Ayabashi snapped, "Enough with that nonsense." She also knew how impressive the abilities of the God of Darkness were. Who knew if their conversation were being listened in on? Don't worry. Not many can lay their hands on me in the entire of Elysium, to say nothing of anyone in the dominions of destruction, death, and darkness. Han Shu said with a carefree chuckle. He really didn't have much to fear with his current power. Oh, you sound confident, Ayabashi said. I see that you've made quite a name for yourself in the past few years. The entirety of the Fringe belongs to you, right? Do you think I can join you if I can no longer stay in the City of Shadows? You are always welcome to the Fringe, Han Shu said. Ayabashi had lived in the City of Shadows for a long time in much part thanks to her benefactor, Wallace. Even with Wallace gone for so long, she still served the Saint family for a long time and could be said to have repaid her debts. Then again, who can possibly match your strength in the City of Shadows, especially when you have Erebus and the Saint family with you? Things have changed, Erebus said before explaining their troubles to Han Shuo. Han Shuo nodded and said, I see. He handed them a few things and said, take it. There's one for each of you, including Carmelita and Andre, and they're used for. Back in the Fringe, Han Shuo had killed quite a lot of high gods, many of whom were near peak stage. He had refined their souls into arcane orbs, which allowed one to absorb the insights of another directly into their soul. Apart from them, he gave them a few enhancing potions that could help Erebus and Ayabashi break through. These are precious. Where did you get them? Erebus asked, completely shocked. They aren't particularly precious. I have lots more where that came from. Don't tell Carmelita and Andre that they came from me. I worry they won't accept them. Andre can't rein them in because he's not powerful enough, so he'll need these. Without letting them refuse, he quickly laughed and said, all right, let's go get some drinks. We're not going home sober. Right after, he caused all sorts of delicacies and delicious wine to appear out of nowhere and began to feast with them. As Andre was managing city matters, a guardian appeared before him, all of a sudden and kneeled. City Lord, the patriarchs of the Kinson, Buller, and Kisa families have sent messengers to inform us that they're willing to accept our conditions and allow us to command their guardians. What? Andre cried in surprise. They didn't even budge no matter how hard I tried, so why did they agree out of nowhere? I don't know either. After some thought, Andre's eyes brightened. Don't tell me. Chapter 998, Unseen GDK 998, Unseen Translator, Ryagawa TLC. Hedonist, the three great families' attitudes had suddenly changed. Now, they listened to Andre without scrutinizing every single detail. The problem that had plagued him for so long seemed to have been solved overnight. It didn't seem possible to him, especially after considering the years Andre had interacted with them. All right, you are dismissed. When he was alone in the room again, he muttered, Brian, you truly are influential. I didn't think the three families would still be beholden to you after so many years. Han Shu was indeed the one who had solved Andre's conundrum. All he did was have Erebus ask to meet the three family heads to tell them Han Shu's stance on the matter. Almost immediately, the family